Welcome to Draw Process. I'm Ike. I draw a comic book page, the next one in my series, First Sun and Sword, and I share that process about my inner experience, my development as an artist. So here we go. Okay, page 28. Let's look at how I put this page together. That's one thing I want to try to point out while I do this voiceover. I'm going to keep the camera positioned where you can see the entire page during this thumbnailing phase. You won't be able to see very well what's happening in each panel, but you'll be able to see the overall, the flow of it. And you'll see it as a whole, which is how I'm considering it, because this is like a thumbnail. So I'm going to do 3 panels at the top. Of course, I don't know that yet when I'm drawing it. What I know is the man. There's one man outside of the door trying to get in, trying to push the door open. Sun is going to be pulling sword towards a window. He's going to jump from the window, hit the ground, and he's going to see a wheeled cart, which is going to be a little bit of a homage to Lone Wolf and Cub, whereas there's the cub in the cart. And so there's going to be a cart there, and he's going to put sword in it to wheel him away to safety. He's not going to do that on this page, though. We're just going to see him noticing the cart in the yard. That's all I know coming into this page. Exactly how I convey that and what the dialogue is going to be is up in the air. So I started with a panel that's a close-up on the man's face as he's peeking in through the crack in the door. It had been 2 weeks since I'd drawn a page because I was on vacation for 1 week and was busy the other. So I forgot a few things. I ended up putting this man, I drew his hand as if it was in a glove, and yet he was not wearing a glove in the earlier pages, which I hadn't drawn for a while, actually, because there were 2 pages in between there that were from the palace, from a different location, different characters. Then we have the second panel, Sun dragging sword towards the window. I wanted to get his face, his reaction. I'm just going by feel, kind of what I see in my mind's eye. The man's sort of like, hey, I'm not going to hurt you if you just open the door, or threatening him in some way. Sun, his face is, pretty worried, pretty scared. Then I'm thinking, okay, the man, we need to see the man one last time before we don't see him again on this page. So he is shoving the door open, and it's hitting all that clutter that was pushed at the door. So he's not able to get through all the way, but he's through some. He's going to have to say something, probably like, don't do it. Don't jump out the window. Stop. Those 3 panels are horizontally, side by side, and they are one paragraph. They're one story in themselves. The man at the door let me in, the boy backing away, the man busting in. I've been really trying to keep concepts grouped together on a row. This next row is a grouping as well. The exterior of the house, seeing Sun pulling sword out the window, them falling through the air and hitting the ground. For this one I did, the first 2 panels are a quarter of the width, and the last one is half of the width. So the first 2 panels are the width of the last panel. When the first 2 combined are the width of the last. I wanted it to be a larger panel when they hit the ground. I wanted you to get a nice view of Sword's reaction and of that moment. And those are challenging to draw, the moment of impact, really, of hitting the ground, the strain, the weight that's pulling Sun down, and the way that Sword is kind of getting woken up, coming to his senses a little bit, kind of clinging to Sun, but still falling at the same time. I just wanted to capture that kind of physical acting in that panel, and really show their full figures. Not just do like a close-up, but show the moment of impact. So those 3 panels, they're in a row. They're a story piece of information. The bottom panel is an over-the-shoulder shot, you could say, where we're sharing sun's gaze looking at that cart. So we have sword and sun on the left third, you could say, third of the width. And then you got the cart on the right third. And here sword is looking at sun. He's not very coherent, but he's trying to express his confusion. And sun is kind of ignoring him and trying to figure out what to do. So now I'm doing my actual pencils. The sketch is very loose, you'll see. Pretty much just basic ellipses for heads and so on. And you'll see the way I'm holding my pencil. I'm just trying to really be expressive and loose with it, with everything I'm drawing. And I haven't drawn these characters or a page at all in two weeks. I haven't drawn this scene in maybe 4 weeks. And I haven't been drawing a whole lot lately. Not too much. I'd been doing some focused anatomy studies on knees, but not full figures. And so I was jumping in here a little fresh, and it felt good. It felt like in the past there's been times, and I feel like this is happening less. But there were times in the past when if I took a break away, it would feel like a struggle, a real slog to get into the constructing the physical spaces, drawing figures correctly. But it's starting to feel like second nature, where even after a break, I can just do it. I do think that state of mind I was getting in is really important. So to feel really relaxed and yet focused. Some people call this like a flow state, but to get really relaxed and focused and not judging yourself so much, more curious, more playful. When I get in that state, I'm trying to, bring things to life that I feel, that I see in my mind, so to speak. And not really critiquing it or hesitating. So as I do that, I notice that it gets easier to pump these pages out. There's a certain state of mind I can be in when it's easier to draw than other times. And where the drawings look better, I feel they have more life to them, but and they also have more errors, more. They're going to have some unique things, but also errors. And I think that when I was newer at drawing comics, it was easy to not do that, because if I draw from the heart, draw in this manner that's not judging myself as much, if I'm really just putting it down as I'm seeing it, my drawing skills, my anatomy knowledge is going to put mistakes down. I'm not going to like the way it looks, and I'm going to be too aware of the errors. And it's not going to have, I'm not going to be able to get in that mental state, and it's also not going to have the kind of life that mental state brings to a page, to the art. But as I, study and practice, I'm able to feel more free to express myself. Yeah. So the goal for me is to get to that state. I honestly think that newer artists would do better if they tried to be in that state when they're doing their work. You know, when you're studying, when you're practicing, you can think differently about it. You can be more judgmental and analytical, critical, careful, sort of rigid and so on. But not when you're actually producing a page. Go ahead and let it be jazz. Let it be fun, and just express yourself with it. And if you look at that and it's got mistakes, so be it. Basically, is how I feel about it. Because the fun you're having with it will come out it'll be visible to people. And you'll just have to spend more time. And that's what I've done, spend more time making comics and studying illustration. And then it'll look better to people, but it'll be coming from the same spirit. And I think that that's something I actually did decently well. I've always been willing to, more than others, I think, draw from my spirit, draw from, that what feels more unique, authentic to me, and let the mistakes show. But there are ways around it in a way, like if you went ahead and drew in your authentic voice, so to speak, but then you lightboxed it and drew on top of it, or scanned it in, or add a new layer if you're going digital. But if you drew over your old drawing, maybe you could capture some of that life, but also fix particular elements that you can double check later. Later, you can be in a critical, judging state of mind, and try to make some adjustments. But again, too much of that, and you're taking the life out of the work. So there's an art to that too. I do think people should consider developing in that direction first. In their sort of drawing authentically on the page with your own flaws showing, and then try to tighten it up later. If you're looking to tighten it up, if you're looking for a certain quality that your client needs or something. When you first find your reference, let's say you're careful and you're working digitally and you place the figures and your references digitally into the panels, or even if it's traditional, you're finding a reference image, a model pose, for each thing, each pose in the panels, and then you draw them. I think you shouldn't do it that way, my opinion, but I think you are working backwards. Like, you should start with your lively drawings and get better at that, and then reflect on it, and then pull out reference and adjust some things at the end. I think that's more long-term thinking. You're going to build a better skill set for the long term, and I think it captures the energy better. You'll notice here I forgot to put a panel border between those two panels on the second row. Not a big deal. I'll add that in here in a minute. And notice here that I sort of wasn't sure if I was going to put background up there above the fence around the yard, but there's been several images from different angles, slightly different angles on this street corner in this house. And I decided to go ahead and put those in the background. I wouldn't have had to. The fence could have been the top of this panel in a way, and that could have looked cool. But as I looked at it here just before inking, I thought, let's go ahead and add these buildings. And you'll see that I'm just quickly throwing them in, and I referenced the comic probably on my phone, just pulled up some of those scenes from the webcomic, and built that space. Now, yeah, it's cool that I can throw them in quickly and easily like that, but they are very loose. Like I was aware even doing it, it was not correct, so to speak. Like they are on a hill, and how steep it is up for debate, but there's some slope to it, and the building's vanishing point should not be the same as the street. The street's going to have a higher, I don't know, a lower vanishing point. Yeah, it'll have a lower horizon than the actual horizon. And it was not drawn in that fashion, but it's not a big deal. And I cut a lot of corners, and that's the only reason I'm mentioning that is because if you watch me drawing and it's already sped up, so your mind can only go at a certain speed when you watch this video. And you might notice, and you just don't know everything that I know about what I'm trying to accomplish. You're not in my head. And so I'm aware that I'm cutting corners and making mistakes all the time. It might look like magic. It might look like, just wildly accurate and so on from your perspective, from a limited, perspective. But I know that I've done it. So like here with this hand, these fingers being gloved instead of actual fingers. And then when I color it, I just treat it like fingers. I even put a fingernail on it. Yeah. So thought it would be worth mentioning that I cut corners all the time. That's part of what you're seeing with the style. That first panel there, this was after a 2-week break. I've been moving further and further towards more detail, more texture, more cartooning in my line work, more energy to the lines. And here, I've gone further than ever. There's wood grain, there's sweat on his forehead. There's details here that I don't normally do, but they don't take very long to do. And they bring it to life more. So I'm just slowly trying to go that direction, and not. At first, I was trying to match the earlier style when I was using Micron earlier in this issue, and then I switched to this. So I was trying to match it more at first, but now I'm just going more freely with what feels right, and I let it go the direction it wants to go, which is more expressive, of course. I'm still using blocks of black. I'm not going to leave these lines I'm putting in, the hatching in the background that you can kind of see through. It has a nice energy. It looks nice. In the future, I might just keep that instead of doing solid black. But for now, I'm filling it in most of the time. But I'm slowly, not always filling it in. I'm slowly moving away from that. So on the style develops. Yeah, and here, that's a very small set of figures. You have Sword getting pulled out the window and Sun hanging out the window by his feet, dragging him from under the arms. Very tiny, and I wondered if it was going to be clear enough what that is. But I think it'll work. When it's with the colors, his cape stands out. Especially his cape will stand out on that background. It'll be clear enough that there's some kind of scribbles there that represent them coming out the window. Yeah, and then with the blacks, it's always the decisions I'm making in the moment regarding where to place heavier blacks. There are the cast shadows from the primary light source. I like to, I do like to try to have a good amount of black on each panel, It feels more balanced that way. So it's always interesting to try to place those blacks. So in this case, the light source is behind the house. The house is casting a shadow onto the ground in front of it. But, how do you handle that? So you have the wall of the house that is in shadow, and then you have the ground, which has a cast shadow on it. Obviously, I can't make all of those black. So you could think of it as your eyes adjusting to a dark room. There's still something lighter, something darker. There's still gradation of value. And so then I have to consider it from a different layer of experience here. So, okay, there's still secondary light. It's not going to be pitch black on the wall of this house, even though it's in shadow. It is, it's still bright outside. There's still light coming from other, from clouds and so on, from diffuse light through the atmosphere and so on. So what I've done is drawn the cast shadow on the floor. You'll see me go back and add that. But it's always, okay, maybe I come up with a secondary light source and draw shadows from that. Because I'm trying to add some of that black just to add depth as well. Not just balance of black and white, but add some depth and guide the eye. So I'm trying to consider reality. I'm trying to consider light sources and shadow and how they'll work together. But also design, clarifying shapes, adding weight or depth to objects, that kind of thing. By drawing in this manner that I do now, that is a little bit more expressive with the lines and has more lines, the lines themselves vary in weight a little bit, and they can wiggle. They have a little more life to them than what I used to do. And there's more of them, some of them indicating texture or something. But by moving this direction, I'm able to do things like in this panel that would have been much more difficult before. I can draw stones on the wall that have that feel more like stones. And then there's a stack of hay against the wall, kind of a hill of it right there. I'm able to indicate that with lines that are just tossed in the background as a pattern. They don't confuse with the foreground. Yeah, so I'm enjoying that change I've made. You'll see here the bottom panel is full bleed, and I'm letting it go up behind the panels above it. Just a bit. I don't like to have it go all the way up the page because I like to have white gutters. I like how it makes panels pop off of the white paper. So I usually will draw up behind the panels a bit, but or let the color, of it go up behind it, but not, and around it, but not all the way to fill the page. So I've just gone a little ways up, and then I just, the way I handled it is I just let the buildings, the drawing just kind of dissipate. I stop adding lines to the building at a certain point. You could think of it as things getting blurry, slowly out of focus. I can't make my lines blurry, not the way I do my art. I can't make the lines out of focus and blurry. So what I have to do is, it's more what I'm doing is more binary. It's either a line or not. So what I can do is break up the lines and add less of them, less details. I can let them get sloppier. There's things I can do like that. And I'm getting more comfortable with that. I think I've been getting the idea that might be part of where I'm going to go in the future with style. Sort of, if you think of things as kind of, if you imagined messy flowing matter, but then it like coalesces into, a face and a hand. You can tell that there's, maybe it's like a dream. But you can tell that there's like a figure there, but it's almost like made out of mist, and it coalesces into a hand, into a face, but the whole body is a little bit wispy still. It's not material, and I've been thinking how I could do that with my inks. I could go more detailed, add the crisp detail in just certain pieces that are the most important, and let the lines, I'm not going to go, wispy. Let's say I'm not going to blur it, for example, but let the lines really start to dissipate, disintegrate from either towards black or towards white throughout the drawing. And I do it a little bit already, but I'm thinking I could do it even more. Like in this drawing, the energy in the lines is somewhat similar from foreground to middle and background. And I could really not even treat it as planes, foreground, middle, background, but as focal point, just between really just the cart, but maybe sword and sun there in the cart and the gate, which are all in a row there. Those are kind of the important elements, and everything else could be looser in some way. Yeah, so I don't know if that makes sense when I just say it verbally, but it's a possibility that I sense, that I can't really picture it. I don't know for sure if I've seen someone do it. Other than, I think I've seen it done with brush. With a dry brush, you can get kind of just like these large, fat, sketchy lines that aren't very clear. But that's different than what I'm saying, because I'm just considering doing it while maintaining vivid lines. This panel here reminds me of a panel in the first comic when Sun, and it was a hint at where even at the time I felt it was a hint at where I was heading in my style, and here it happens again. And it reminds me of the panel was the dragoness getting hit in the chest with the hilt of the short sword or the dagger. Sun had just he had turned around and thrown the sword at her while he was kneeling on the ground. The panels before that were a little bit more dead on camera, a little bit simpler, and then I got to that panel, and because I chose an interesting angle and something dynamic, I drew it in a very fluid fashion, and it looked really cool, I thought, and it looked more alive, and it just stood out. And I was like, oh, well, that's where things are going to be going as I continue to use cool, dynamic scenes with, better camera angles and stuff. As I bring it to life more and feel free to do so, this is going to happen more. And this reminds me of that. I think it's also because there's just something weirdly alive about it when it's like an over-the-shoulder shot. Both of them were. The camera was up a little higher and it was over the shoulder. So there's something about the perspective on it that just kind of feels alive. Coming in with the blacks now, you'll see in one panel the house that's this side of the house that's in shadow is not solid black, but in the next it is. I should comment on that too. I think artists sometimes we get too married to thinking that the objects in the scene have the properties that we're drawing. So like if something is in shadow and I drew it as black or as dark in one panel, In the next panel, from a different angle or close up, it's also going to be dark because it was dark, but it's not dark. It's looked dark to your eye in relation to the scene. Even cameras adjust how much light they're letting in, and our human eye definitely does. So you go into a dark room, a somewhat dark room, your eyes adjust enough that certain areas feel bright, certain feel dark. So this house from a distance, it's bright. I mean, it's not, it's pretty bright. But when we come down lower and we're close up on it, we're kind of looking towards the sun at this point, that which is very bright behind them. Now the house is substantially darker. Now the overall, brightness or darkness, the range of values in each panel is somewhat similar, but they're not always the same median. They're not always going to have the same, but somewhat. You don't want to have you don't want to make a huge difference in that. Like, you can't have a dark scene be completely, have variation, but all of the art is actually dark. You're going to have some bright elements too, or it just will look too dark, especially in print. Let's see. I'm wrapping up the page. I go through with an eraser, take out the pencils, which is very easy to do versus using a micron. The micron, it lifts a little more off the page, I feel, but the nib and the speedball ink I use is very thick. It's thick on the page, and it digs into the page a bit, maybe too. So it just feels very easy to erase now. White acrylic paint in this brush pen. I'm just going through and cleaning up a few little spots that I think could look a little better. We're almost there. So some of this can be done digitally. I'm not a stickler for making the original piece of art perfect. If there's like a line connecting two panels through a gutter, I can just erase that digitally. And if there's a large area that's just going to be solid black, I might as well fill it in digitally. There's no reason for me to do it on the page. And I'm learning to, be more comfortable with that and just go with it. I mentioned that, I had the vacation and then a week of not drawing pages. So not drawing as often as I was, and maybe I'll get to talk more about that next week. It's been a weird experience of life getting busier, more organized, and better, but also it's slower and slowing down on the art. And there is the finished page, inks, and then the finished page there. I did slightly adjust the inks from prior pages, trying to get them more like the original inks. So a slightly less bitmapped, you could say. And it's a minor change, but I guess it does look a little more rich this way. That's it for this week. I'm going to draw a page next week and do some more anatomy work, just a little at least, maybe not every day. And then I'll get another video out for you guys next week. See ya.